Coworker and possible niece's DNA matched mine on a website, and now I'm struggling with how to confront her about our potential family connection. Basically, my older brother, would be 40 male, but he OD'd 4 years ago, starting from when he was a teenager, made all kinds of bad decisions. Tons of debt, failing out of school, legal trouble with DUIs and drugs, several failed attempts at rehab, being involved with questionable people. At one point when he was still living with us, we had this strange woman repeatedly showing up drunk at our house with a baby/toddler. I couldn't really tell as I was a kid myself, but I think the baby was not a newborn but not walking or talking yet either. She claimed was my brother's and demanding money. This woman was, or she looked, older than my brother, drunk, aggressive, didn't seem right in the head, and my mom, 58F, at the time just basically saw this woman as a threat, and either threatened or just called the cops every time she showed up. Eventually she stopped showing up, no idea what happened to her. Since then my mom has expressed that she feels bad about that, says she wonders about the baby girl on the off chance she was actually my brother's. The baby had red hair, so do my brother and me, and wishes she had reacted more rationally. Especially since my brother dies, she's been bringing this up more often and saying she has dreams about that baby sometimes. I know my mom struggled with a lot of guilt since my brother died, since she tried to help him so many times and couldn't really save him from throwing his life away, so I submitted my DNA to a website. My mom doesn't know, I didn't want to tell her and get her hopes up. Well, I found out that the one of the closest match other than people I already know I'm related to is my coworker. Her name is really unusual, so it's most definitely her and not someone else with her name. We've been working together for about 2 years and I've been her supervisor for most of that time. We work well together, but we aren't close. I don't think she's ever told me anything about her family except her cats. So I don't know how to even bring this up. I don't know how to even look her in the eye the next time we have a shift together. We have different shifts tomorrow, thank God. If the DNA test brought up a stranger, I had a perfect plan for what to write to them, but I had no plan at all for if it was someone I knew. Should I call her? Talk to her about it at work? I don't know when she's going to see my name as a match. I don't know how to ask her, hey, is your mom the crazy drunk foreign lady who used to try to get child support from my brother? I don't know how to ask her to come meet my mother and bring her closure. And I'm afraid now she'll want something from me or my family like unpaid child support. It's deserved, but I can't exactly afford it. My mom isn't rich, either after paying a bunch of legal fees for my brother, or that she'll want a family relationship with me when I don't know how to suddenly switch gears in my head and become someone's uncle instead of a supervisor. I know those things would be an issue no matter who my niece was, but it seems different when my work life comes into it and when it's someone I already know. I mean, I figure if she's looking for her birth family, she probably wants a relationship. I knew my mom would want a relationship, so that wasn't a problem for me until I knew I'd see this person every day. Update 1. I texted my coworker about the DNA match and she agreed to meet with me after work the next day. It was an uncomfortable conversation, and a very uncomfortable work day, but it wasn't horrible. Here's the gist of what I found out. We are pretty sure we are uncle and niece. We don't know for sure if she's the same baby who that woman brought to our house all those years ago, but it seems likely. The timing lines up. But the only way to know for sure would be for my niece to ask her mother, which she doesn't want to do. She has known for most of her life that her mother's boyfriend who raised her was probably not her biological father, but it was confirmed with the DNA test several years ago. She still calls him her dad. It made the conversation confusing a few times. She never wanted to meet her biological father. She did the test more out of curiosity about her ethnicity and for medical reasons. She did have a rough childhood, but she says she and her family are in a better situation now. At the time that was all she told me and then changed the subject. She is thinking about meeting my mother and having a relationship, but she needs some time to decide. She said that if she decides against contact, she'd still be okay with me telling my mom about her so my mom can have some closure, just so long as I don't give my mom her contact info without permission, which of course I'd never do. I haven't told my mom about finding her yet and won't until she makes a decision. I brought up the issue about our work situation. Now if I recommend her for a promotion, it's suddenly nepotism, even if I would have done that anyway. The company might transfer one of us to another department or location if they find out. She said she didn't want to lie and wouldn't mind being transferred and might even prefer another location. I dealt with the HR disclosure. They're talking to both of us separately and reviewing policy to come up with a fair solution. I typed most of that yesterday evening. After our initial conversation, my niece and I spent the next 2 days of work basically pretending like nothing happened. But then as I was typing the update post, I got a text from her asking if I could meet up and talk again, and I figured I'd wait for that to post an update. So this morning we met up for coffee again and my niece asked some more questions. Some things about my brother's medical history, then just a little bit about what he was like, what's my mom like, what's our extended family like, etc. I was honest about my brother's issues, but I tried to be sensitive and tone down the attitude I usually have about him. It actually made me really emotional. I mean shit, my brother was a train wreck for most of my life, but once upon a time he had been someone I looked up to who played catch with me and helped me with homework. I loved him, I just didn't love the person he became. Anyway, by then I felt like the ice was broken and the conversation was more personal, so I asked my niece again what her life had been like. Long story short, it turns out, her mom was once a prostitute. That's why she wasn't interested in meeting her biological father and why she hadn't thought her mother even knew who her father was. She told me about how she spent the earliest years of her life in extreme poverty having to shoplift necessities, until her mom and her mom's boyfriend managed to find stable jobs. It made me feel like a complete monster. My whole life I'd thought of my niece's mother, assuming it's the same woman who showed up at our house back then, as some horrible older woman who helped drag my teenage brother deeper into a wretched lifestyle. But it turned out she was just selling sex to survive. She didn't lure him in, she didn't want him, he went looking for her. That flipped a switch in my head for some reason, I don't know. To clarify, I was like 10 to 11 when the woman was showing up, so even if I'd known better it's not like I could have made a difference either way, but it still hit me hard to think about how I'd been judging her and trying to justify my mom's denying the baby because I thought it was necessary to protect my brother back when it seemed like there still could have been hope for him. I was really shocked with some of the details of what my niece told me. When I found out it was my coworker. Of course I freaked out about how to actually handle the situation, but I guess in some ways I felt relieved? Absolved? Because she seemed like she turned out okay. She's employed, in college, hardworking, super responsible. I wouldn't have guessed she'd had a rough childhood from what I knew of her. Finding out the full details, there was more to it than what I typed here, made me feel like a monster. She cried, I nearly cried, we hugged awkwardly. She's still undecided if she wants any contact with my mom. But she says she's glad we had this conversation. She says there aren't many people she can talk about her past with. I'm glad we talked, too. There were a lot of feelings about my brother I've pretty much been suppressing. It's probably been good for me to actually have to process them, even if it hurt. I'm also glad I got to help her in some way by being a listening ear, and I'm glad I got to know her a bit, even if she ends up deciding she doesn't want a relationship with my side of the family, or ends up transferring and we don't see each other at all anymore. Update 2. So my niece decided that she is willing to meet my mom. She gave me a letter to pass on to her, asked me to tell her how my mom reacted and help set up a time and place. I already gave it to my mom, after I read it, with my niece's permission, so I can't share the exact words, but here's the gist of it. First she introduced herself by name, age, what she's learning in college, and the family she grew up with, basic stuff. Then she went on to explain some things we had already spoken about in person. Basically about how she had an extremely difficult life in her early childhood. That she always knew her father wasn't really her father but hadn't thought her biological father even had any idea she existed, let alone that his family would know she had existed. She wrote that when she found out we'd known about her and refused to help, she was angry. She said she understood why we wouldn't want to give her mother any money, but there were other things we could have given. She wrote about some of the things she'd been through and how it could have been avoided if we'd helped her even a little. To be honest, that part was pretty hard to read. My niece even said as I was reading it, "Don't worry, I know it wasn't your fault. You were just a kid," and looked like she might be afraid of how I would react. I told her I didn't blame her at all for being mad at my mom, and I wouldn't blame her for being mad at me either. She just nodded and didn't look me in the eye. After that part she had written something really nice, that she knew me and I was a good man, so she knows my mother must have been a good mother, and that she was sorry to hear my brother/her father died, and that she knows how it feels when someone you love keeps making the wrong choices over and over, and that my mother shouldn't blame herself for that. In the rest of the letter she wrote some religious things. I'm not really religious, but I respect it. My mom kinda pretends to be religious but doesn't ever actually go to church. She said she'd been praying for the strength to forgive my mom, and she believed God wouldn't have let her go through those things in her childhood if there wasn't a reason. And that there also must be a reason why I found her now, and that if my mom was willing, she was ready to meet face to face. I told my mom about finding her yesterday. She was shocked, asked tons of questions including a bunch I didn't know the answers to. Finally I gave her the letter and a picture my niece had given me to pass on. My mom was so excited she burst into tears and kept saying, "She looks exactly like my brother," and pointed out every single feature of hers and how it apparently looked just like him or like my dad, who is also deceased. To be honest, I don't really think it was that obvious of a resemblance, but that's not important. Then she read the letter and she was inconsolable. She full-on sobbed for about 2 hours. It was about as bad as my brother's funeral. Even after she calmed down she would burst into tears every once in a while for the rest of the day. But eventually she mellowed out enough to think of a few different dates/times/places to meet up. I texted these to my niece and she said she'd look over her schedule and get back to me. So I guess what I wanted to ask is, since I'm kinda playing diplomat here, can anyone think of things I should keep in mind? Of course my niece's preferences are going to take priority over suggestions, but some issues I've been particularly wondering about. Should we meet in public as it's neutral territory? Or invite my niece over to our house so we don't have to worry about other people being around and making things awkward? Part of the reason that first conversation with my niece over coffee was so uncomfortable was because there were so many other people around, I think. My mom keeps saying we need to invite my niece to my cousin's wedding in February and introduce her to the rest of the family. I think that's a terrible idea. Way too soon and way too many people at once. But my mom says if we don't at least ask it's like we don't consider her part of the family. I think if we ask we're putting her in the position of having to say no and worry about being rude. But my mom will not let it drop. For the rest of the post I'm asking for open-ended advice, but on this particular issue I'm mostly asking for people to tell me I'm right, and for ideas of things I can say to get my mom to drop it. Should I start acting more friendly to my niece at work? Obviously I'm not gonna be like, hey niece, it's me your favorite uncle, and draw a bunch of attention to it, but now it's like when we're at work we act like nothing happened and it's weird. Should I at least smile and chat with her more? Might not be a problem for much longer since my niece is probably transferring to a different location. In general, anything else I should keep in mind for the meeting with my niece and my mom? Things I should talk with or ask either of them about beforehand. Thanks again for all the advice so far. Update 3. So it was a disaster. There's so much I should have done but didn't think to do at the time, and I just feel like I messed up big time. I don't know what to do about it. I tried to keep in mind all the suggestions I got, like before the meeting I asked my niece where she wanted to meet, if she wanted to bring anyone with her, if there was anything I should tell my mom not to talk/ask about. She just said, I'm sure I can handle it, and couldn't think of anything, but she did agree that if she wanted help getting my mom to back off, that she'd look at me and blink 3 times. I talked to my mom first too and basically just tried to warn her, don't come on too strong, be sensitive, don't try to defend her actions. She agreed not to do any of those things. But so my niece shows up at my mom's place, niece's choice, and right away, my mom is all over her, hugging and touching her hair and crying. My niece didn't seem to be enjoying that very much, but she tolerated it. I would have intervened, but she didn't signal me by blinking, and it didn't last very long, so I thought, okay, I'll do something about it if it happens again, but let it drop. My mom asked my niece a bunch of questions and the whole vibe was honestly uncomfortable. Maybe she felt like she was being interrogated. They weren't ill-intended questions, but they were personal. Things like, what does her name mean? What neighborhood does she live in? Does she have a boyfriend? What's she going to do after college? Etc. My niece was kind of stiff and just answered the questions, but not warmly. In hindsight, I probably should have intervened, but I didn't think much of it. She didn't use the signal. And she was kind of the same way, stiff and impersonal, when she and I first talked about being related. But then the next time we talked she warmed up. So I thought maybe she just needed to warm up. The real disaster happened when my mom brought up my niece's childhood, and went and did exactly what she said she wouldn't do, and worse. I didn't really do my part either, and I'm kicking myself, but it escalated so fast. I'm gonna remember what was said as best as possible. I can't think of an easy way to sum this up, it just escalated so fast. Mom, I'm so sorry that we didn't take you in when you were a baby. I didn't know. Niece, I forgive you. I believe, Mom, you have to understand, from my perspective, I was just trying to protect my baby. Your father, me, hey, Mom, niece, he wasn't a baby. I was a baby. I was an actual baby. Mom, he was my baby. You'll understand that when you have kids. And from my perspective, there was this strange ethnicity woman, niece. What does being ethnicity have to do with it? Mom, nothing. It wasn't because she was ethnicity, this woman was shouting. She was acting like she was on something. My kid answered the door. Points to me, I didn't know what she might have done to my name, or niece. She wouldn't have done anything to him. You think she'd hurt kids just because she's ethnicity? Mom, I wasn't saying that. I was saying, niece, yes, you were. Mom, I was saying I didn't know this woman, she could have been anyone. I didn't know if you were even really, brother's name S. Niece, do you think if my mom was going to lie about a person being my father, she would have picked someone who lived here? Gestures around my mom's place, which is not very classy. Me, hey, Mom, well, I didn't know. I asked, brother's name, and he said he didn't know that woman and had no idea. Niece, right, because men never lie. Me, hey, Mom, well, all I'm saying is, if she had gone through the proper courts and, niece, she was an undocumented prostitute, of course she didn't. She then grabbed her shoes and sprinted out of my mom's place. I ran after her to make sure she was okay. She said to leave her alone. I asked if I could at least give her a ride and she screamed, go away. So I did. And I was worried because this neighborhood isn't the safest place to walk, so I texted my niece and apologized again and said it's okay if she doesn't want to talk, but please just text me when she gets home so I know she's okay. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, I don't know, but I was worried. She did text me back later and said she was okay. She also apologized for losing her cool, but said she's going to call out of work for a few days and don't contact her until she comes back. So I guess my question is, now what? I'm still at my mom's place and I want to yell at her, but she's already sobbing. I feel horrible and I don't know how to fix this. I didn't foresee my mom saying those things about niece's mom's ethnicity, and I should have intervened, but I kind of panicked and couldn't think of what to say. My mom is a kind person but not always tactful. I'd really appreciate any advice. I don't really have anyone to talk to about this. Most of my friends are from work. I can't talk to them about it for obvious reasons. Update 4. It's been more than a month since my last post, and my last post didn't get a lot of comments, but I've gotten a lot of good advice and support from here. So now that things are looking like they might work out, I wanted to post one more update, hopefully the last one. Thank you everyone for the advice and kind words. Here's the gist of what happened since that awful disaster of a reunion. I talked to my mom about what went wrong with the things she said to my niece. I basically told her that her apologies weren't really apologies and she was just trying to defend herself and not apologize. At first my mom was argumentative with me about it, but eventually she admitted I was right and she didn't handle it well. She found this book about how to apologize to people and she said it helped. My mom said she doesn't know why she brought up my niece's mother's ethnicity, she said it just slipped out. She agreed that she needs to be more sensitive about that kind of thing. I'm concerned that it'll just slip out again. So if anyone has any resources for old white people on how to not be prejudiced, let me know. Especially books. My mom insists that only books are reliable and anything you read on the internet or see on TV is lies. She and I worked together to write an apology letter to my niece, for her to read whenever she wants to if she wants to, no pressure to respond. She apologized for saying offensive things and for making the reunion about defending herself and not being more considerate of my niece's feelings. Then thanked her for the kindness of coming and said she'd like to try again but she understood if my niece wouldn't want to and she wished her the best regardless. And my niece was kind enough to give us another chance. We all met up again to try to talk things out one more time. And this time it went much better. My niece vented some things but also said she understood why my mom did what she did, and then she was like, you can't change the past, all we can do is move forward. Then they had a nicer conversation about random subjects my mom brought up. My mom wants to pay for some of my niece's college, she can't really afford much though. My niece didn't want to take the money but finally agreed and promised to pay it all forward once she reaches her career end goal. Speaking of careers, my niece is actually leaving her current job to work at a more future career relevant job starting later this spring. I'll miss seeing her around at work, but I'm happy for her. And for as long as she's in the area, she and I are going to get together every month for lunch and or something fun. Getting to know my niece has made me remember some of the good times with my brother. Like when we used to go to movies together, or hang out at the arcade/pizza place, amusement parks. I used to think he was the coolest and most fun person in the world. It brought up grief, not only for my brother, but also, knowing how my niece and I have a similar age gap, how I might have been that person for her. I'm really sad that I missed out on that. But now we have a chance to make up for lost time. My mom and my niece both like baking and cooking, so they are going to start occasionally meeting up at my mom's house to do that and exchange recipes. My niece doesn't want to spend holidays with us, come to family get-togethers, or meet anyone else in our family. At least not for now, possibly never. I totally understand and respect this. I really can't thank you all enough for all the support, advice, and kind words. I don't know how this situation would have turned out without all of your help. Update 5. Even though it's been a few months since my last post, I've had a couple of people ask for updates. I don't have anything dramatic or exciting to say. Things have more or less settled down, but since people are still curious, I might as well let you know that things are going fine. My niece quit her job for a while to take another job, but we are so understaffed right now we pretty much begged her to come back for a few shifts a week while she's out of school, in exchange for a pretty decent bonus, which she accepted. So I'm seeing her regularly again. We don't talk much at work, no one at our job knows we're related, except HR and one coworker who is my niece's close friend, but it's nice. Me, my niece, and my niece's friend went to get ice cream together on lunch break a few days ago. My niece has visited my mom a few times, too. She gave her some flowers for Mother's Day which made my mom cry. She also went to my mom's place last week and they made some kind of dessert that I don't remember what it was called, but it was really delicious. I passed on everyone's book suggestions to my mom and I think she got them on Audible or Kindle. I know my mom didn't come across the best in my post, but my mom is a good person and she doesn't want to say anything hurtful again. Update 6. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and I'm happy to report that things have continued to improve in our family dynamic. My niece has become a more regular part of our lives, and the relationship between her and my mom has grown significantly. Last month, my niece graduated from college, and to our surprise, she invited us to attend the ceremony. It was a proud moment for all of us, especially my mom, who couldn't stop smiling and tearing up throughout the event. After the ceremony, my niece introduced us to her adoptive parents. It was a bit awkward at first, but they were incredibly gracious and thanked us for being there for her now. The real highlight came a few weeks later when my niece announced she'd been accepted into a prestigious graduate program. To celebrate, she suggested we all go on a weekend trip together to a nearby beach town. I was a bit nervous about how it would go, but it turned out to be an amazing experience. During the trip, my mom and niece had a heart-to-heart conversation one evening while walking along the beach. My mom finally opened up about her struggles with my brother and the guilt she'd carried for years. My niece, in turn, shared more about her childhood and the challenges she'd overcome. It was a cathartic moment for both of them, and I could see a weight lift off their shoulders. On a lighter note, we discovered that my niece has inherited my brother's terrible sense of humor. She spent the entire weekend cracking the most groan-worthy puns, just like he used to do. It was bittersweet, but mostly sweet, to see that little piece of him shine through in her. As for work, my niece has officially left our company to focus on her graduate studies. However, she's been coming over for dinner at least once a week, usually bringing some new recipes she wants to try out with my mom. Last week, they attempted to make a soufflé, which ended in hilarious disaster in a kitchen full of smoke. We ended up ordering pizza and laughing about it all evening. There have been some challenging moments too. My niece recently asked to see some old photos of my brother, which brought up a lot of emotions for everyone. But we got through it together, and I think it helped her connect with the father she never knew. Looking ahead, my niece has tentatively agreed to join us for Thanksgiving this year. It'll be her first major holiday with our side of the family, and while she's a bit nervous, she says she's looking forward to it. My mom is already planning the menu and fretting over every detail.